when the first snow machine, we heard about it from Slim Lawrence, got a fellow that from Durango, Colorado, had the first snow plane. That was in 1942, and we were skiing back from Yellowstone, and Slim met us at the end of the lake. And gosh, to see something going on the snow, as easy as that, we were just all agog. I didn't get to ride in it then. They give Simmons a little ride in it, and during the summer he talked to the superintendent, and we got, for the next year, we got the first snow plane for the watershed, and we started using it.
As near as I can remember, it was probably Stan Seaton probably built his back in the, and then there used to be a commercial outfit down at near Afton called Call Air, and they built a lot of them. And then people started building their own and pattern them after the ones that was in the valley. And some of the fellows got pretty fancy with them, that they built snow planes, and of course they were kind of built right here. Between here and Afton. Back in the old days, they probably used a lot of them, like Jim Raines Sr. used to deliver mail in one. And probably more than once, he probably delivered hospital or, medical supplies to people when somebody was sick. Some of the people years ago used to, Harry Brown and Fred Abercrombie, I suppose John Wilson went with them. George Wilson, a lot of them old timers used to take them to Yellowstone Park every winter. And they'd take their fuel up in the fall before it snowed in, and then in the wintertime they'd make their annual trip to Old Faithful and back. Well, it was a way to get over the snow, to find some way to get in and out. Why Stan built the first one, but probably to get in and out of I don't really lived at Kelly or where he was living at that time, but it was for transportation. And after they developed a little bit, I know Mr. Raines had he used his on his mail delivery, like probably to Kelly and I don't know where all he delivered the mail, but there was a lot of times the roads would snow in, and that's the only way they could to get around. I remember times when the valley was snowed in for 30 days to 40, and the only mail we got was flew in with an airplane with skis on it. And of course, probably Mr. Raines at that time, he probably delivered mail in his snowplane to Cali and different little settlements. When I first started, there was maybe 15 of us, or 20 at the most. A lot of them have quit running their planes. Of course, some of them have got old. And first fellow I started with, he's passed away, but man, we spent many days up here. And then we didn't have that auger, we had that ice spud. You know, and we'd hear about a bar out here or a place where was good fishing, and we'd start digging with that bar. And you know, it takes, when the ice gets a couple of feet thick, it takes 15, 20 minutes, maybe 10 minutes to cut a hole. You chop away, and then we had a scoop, and we'd scoop the snow and ice out of it, and then we'd have to dig some more with the ice spud till you finally got a hole. And you know, it was hard work to go out here, and we didn't know the landmarks at that time, you know, like I do now. I can look at the Jackson Peak if it's not in a snowstorm, you know, or something, and line it up with some other place and know that I'm on the bar. Back then we didn't know all these places, and we'd spend hours, you know, digging holes every little bit and measuring the water until we got right on the bar. And back then, probably fishing was as good. We caught a lot of big fish, more big fish then probably. There's probably more here then. Now if you catch maybe one a winter if you're lucky. And I remember a lot of winters, you know, we'd maybe catch a half a dozen or more. Dale Reiniger, of course, he released quite a few of them. He'd catch 12, 15 in the wintertime. And a lot of them he turned loose unless he wanted to eat one. Probably when I was about 15. I'm up on the lake with a fellow by the name of Henry Francis and my father, and done some ice fishing. And of course, in the wintertime, quite often we'd drive up and walk out and fish, or ski out and fish. And of course, as soon as I was in Henry Francis' plane, I knew I had to have one of them someday. And it took quite a few years after that before I got it. But I had seen another fellow. He's not in the country anymore. He had a snow plane. And he had a fellow. We had a couple fellows from California up here, and was on the other side of the lake fishing. And there was a kind of an open ridge run up there, and so Jimmy, he never did care for fishing that much. He liked to play with that plane, and so he took this fellow up on that ridge, and they circled and started down, and the plane kind of got to sliding on that crust, and Jimmy couldn't hold it, so he bailed out. And of course, that guy in the back seat, he couldn't get out. And the plane slid off of this ridge and down into the timber and hit a tree. Of course, as Jimmy left, he hollered at him, said, "Just hang on, ride her out." And that guy, he was about as white as the snow was. He was kind of dark complected anyway, but boy, he was scared when we got up there. Jimmy, he wrecked his plane. He sat up there and laughed. He thought that was the funniest thing he'd pulled in a long time. And me, I'd have been pretty shook up. That one's been on the lake since 1967. And I have to paint it every 2 or 3 years. Make sure its motor's in running condition and keep it up. Normally we wax our skis about twice a year. We use paraffin and tar, graphite. A lot of the old timers, when they first start building, they use old records. Melt old records down and put beeswax with them and tar and stuff. And they all had their own concoction that they'd mix up. Now there's a lot of them using Teflon. They get about 1/4 inch Teflon and bolt it onto their aluminum skis. And it saves them having to wax and everything, and they'll always go, but some days they don't go as good as the waxed ones. You get up here and we'll look at today. In the mountains, and you have days like this where it's really kind of solitude and quiet. Maybe we'll catch another one, huh? course, you're always fishing. You're waiting for that great big one to come along. Many winters I fished up here, there was no snowmobiles. Yeah, a lot of years I fished without seeing a snowmobile on the lake.
Snow machine. I'm sitting on a 1965 vintage Arctic Cat. And one of our great joys was to go to Granite Creek Pool in the winter. Now, nobody went to Granite Creek Pool. Dr. McLeod, of course, owned the ranch up there. He was always happy to have anybody go up who were friends. And we would go up to Granite Creek, and these machines would take us all day digging out, and because there was no grooming. And it seemed like there was more snow then than there is now. But we'd go up there and set up camp for 2 or 3 days. The Harringtons and the Lays, Dr. and Mrs. Elbert Lay, and Avis and I, and we'd cook in one of the Forest Service dressing rooms, help ourselves to the pool. It was wonderful, and we just had great times. And then as the machines developed, and you can see around my property I have 6 other snow machines. Actually, Avis and I quit for about 4 or 5 years, but with the 10 grandchildren, we quickly got over that idea because they loved the snow machine. And we have a place right down here on the field in front of us for them to snow machine. We can watch them. And as the snow machines developed, and they started grooming and opening up the various roads and did grooming, it was a wonderful, wonderful thing to do. To go up the Grovant, up Cache Creek, up Sheep Creek, up to the Darwin Ranch, which was a very difficult chore. I can remember Pete Meade and Jimmy Brown and John Harrington and that group of renegades, Bill Meckham, taking their machines and going up Fish Creek all the way over to Union Pass when the roads were not groomed. And that's quite a feat. That's a trip I never made. I think they thought I was a pansy or something. But I never got up there. But that, used to hear them talk about it. They did some wonderful, wonderful things. And there are great stories told about snow machining and skiing. They were very compatible. And of course, Avis and I still downhill ski, and we cross-country ski. We snow machine, and we love it. As we get older, we can see that snow machining definitely has a place in this community. When you get a little older, sometimes it's a little hard to ski. First snow machine ride. Well, it would have been on a machine like this, and it would have been to a place like Granite Creek, Granite Hot Springs. That would probably have been about our first trip. I can remember that John Harrington and I took our supplies in ahead of time. We had a 5,000 BT unit heater and sleeping bags and whatnot, and then we came back, and then the ladies came up and we brought them up to Granite Creek and Granite Pool, and that was probably about the first trip. Great experience, great memories, and other great things were watching those renegades try and break their neck, which they never did, fortunately. But smoking cigars, taking a snip or two of the sweet stuff, it was a great fun, great fun.
But I got to interpose a story of the dog team, because I think it's part of the story. They were settlers, the ranchers down in that part of the valley, decided they would like to have mail service. But the mail department said they couldn't finish it unless they did it to haul the mail themselves for 2 years. Well, all the ranchers said they would all help, but Dad said, well, if you'll just let me haul the mail in the wintertime, if you will haul it all summertime, that'll give me time to do my ranching chores. So they agreed, and Dad got together a number of dogs and had a dog team and hauled the mail from Jackson. He'd go up to Jackson once a week, gather up the mail and bring it back down the next day, and took the best part of a week to get all that done, but he had to do it every week. And then in the middle of it all, Geraldine Lucas came to him and said, George, I've got a Malamute Husky dog I'd like you to take. He's causing me more trouble than you can imagine. Well, there was two of them that her brother, Robert Lucas, had brought on the revenue cutter Bear from north of the Arctic Circle. And they teamed up and they would go out and kill cattle, just for fun. Hamstring them and gut their throats. Didn't want to eat them, they just did that. So she brought that dog to town, and Dad hooked him up there in front of the Marcel's store, and he was pretty mean. But he hooked him up at the wheel position because he was big, and he had a white collie dog that Tom Sewell had given him. The collie dog apparently was one that Tom Sewell had bought from back east, and he was going to have a great cattle dog. Well, he didn't turn out to be a great cattle dog because he would go to the wrong end of the cow. So he was ready to shoot him, but he gave him to Dad, and Dad used him for his lead dog. A smart dog, ooh, call him Spot. Anyway, they got hooked up, and it was like 20 or 30 below zero in front of Billy Marcel's store. Dad had the mail all loaded on, and he had that dog hooked up. And whenever the team was waiting, the collie dog, Spot, would turn his head and watch Dad. As soon as Dad dropped his arm, whew, away they went. And the husky dog didn't know what was going on. They dragged him clear to Flat Creek. And he was so out of condition that he was no good from then on. And of course, Dad had to give him a good lesson. He beat him with a 4-year-old club, he said. But they got him loaded onto the dadgum sled because he was just wore out. So the team took Dad and 200 pounds of mail and that big dog clear to Hoback. And of course, a lot of times Dad had to go along the edge of the river on the ice, and sometimes the ice was thin and would break with him. And I don't know. He did a lot of wild things, and I thought they were great. I'm sorry I didn't get to live in that age, but the age I lived in was worthwhile. Anyway, they get down to hauling the mail, and Mother had to take care of that dog the next week or two. Had him in the root cellar, and he would get out, and being half wolf, he was howling at the moon every night. I can imagine being out there and alone in the winter, and that wolf howling at the moon. Whew. 20 miles from the nearest neighbor. Mother was about to go crazy. She says, "George, if you don't get rid of that dog or do something about it," etc., etc. So that, after that trip, why, Dad came in and they proceeded to get ready for bed, blew out the light, and the dog started in, howling at the moon. So Dad put on his pants and lit the light and went out there and gave him a good working over. Again, he said it was with a 4-year-old club, whatever that meant. And he went back and went to bed, blew out the light, and it wasn't very long. It was howling again. So Dad said all he had to do was get up, put his pants on, go to the door, and that was the end of it. He didn't howl anymore.
All right, let's give him a big applause. Yeah, look at those beautiful dogs. If you just wanted to go visit the start or finish lines of this race, you would see just how excited and happy these dogs are. They love doing this as much as we love doing anything that we consider a fun activity.
But of course it eventually got good, and the roads was good, and no problem for transportation. And of course the dog races is discontinued in Ashton. About the only place they have dog races, I guess, now is in Alaska. But the races was a big thing in Ashton. And then they'd invite some of us guys over there to bring the cutters and have a cutter race. But the dog race was the main thing. And you'd go over the hill and into Driggs and then go up the back road from Tetonia into Ashton on that back road. And things just kept getting better and better. There was a fellow here by the name of Jack Neal. He finally got a dog team. He got a bunch of German Shepherds and broke them to work. And then he'd run around Ashton and go to some of them races. And then he finally got his stepson to drive the team. And they got little better dogs, got them bird dogs. And it was quite a thing for a year or two here, the dog races. But the cutter races took over, and then the ski hill was made, and they finally got the ski lift in 45.